All right, I think we are live. So, good morning. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good, fine.
Well,
So, we are sitting here chatting with the President and Recruitment Director for HACIA, which is a student organization which is running the HACIA Summit of the Americas. So, I just want to say good morning, or I guess I should say buenos dias. Can we start off? Can you guys tell me just a little bit about HACIA and what you guys are planning for March?
So HACIA, as some of you might know, I know this delegation participated last year, is like Model UN. It's a simulation of international bodies, except in our case, it's simulation. So that's Organization of the American States. And so at HACIA, we bring students from all across Latin America, all across North America as well, to come together and take on several roles that will hopefully teach them about debate, negotiation, diplomatic skills, and basically the communication and networking skills that we feel are necessary to succeed and advance the priorities of Latin American citizens, as well as relations between the United States and Latin America and other regions of the world. And Christina, if you had anything to add.
yeah, I'm Christina. I did HACIA in high school, all through high school, and then continued it through college now. And in many ways, HACIA was the ultimate academic experience, in the sense that you had to write, and you had to write that response paper, and then you had to do a bunch of research on your topic so you could debate well, and then you went and met these super cool kids who had very varying interests, but all were interested in policy and changing the face of politics in Latin America, which needs a lot of change. I'm from Nicaragua, so we just elected our president, who has been elected for several terms now. So democracy is a really big deal, and HACIA, its ultimate mission is to advance this democratic system of debate. And so, yeah, just as Sophia said, this is a conference for many people from all across Latin America, and for young kids to put their minds to work and think about how democracy really should work in the country.
So what's the difference between HACIA and a traditional Model UN conference in the United States? What makes it special? Why should someone from the US be interested in going to participate?
Model UN in college for a long time, and I ended up choosing to do HACIA and committing myself to HACIA because I feel that a lot of Model UN debates and a lot of Model UN tournaments end up focusing a lot on very much on the parliamentary procedure side of the debate. And we've heard from our directors that we have several directors that head the Model UN conference we actually have the Secretary General of the Harvard Model UN conference is part of our staff. Several of the head delegates of the Model UN team at Harvard are part of our staff. And all of us agree that we feel that HACIA Democracy has more of a focus on content, more of a focus on actually getting to know your peers and getting to debate to cooperate together. For some reason, Model UN, we feel, focuses a little bit more on, the parliamentary procedure and the technical aspects of debating in a Model UN context. Whereas in HACIA, you have a lot of students that come from very different debate backgrounds. Some of them just do HACIA as their debate, as an extracurricular. Some of them do Model UN. Others do just debate. And when they come together and they're all trying to come up with a way to solve the problem, you end up, yes, using parliamentary procedure, but focusing more on, and we have our staffers also guide students into focusing more on content, achieving some sort of democratic ends or some sort of prosperous ends to the conflict, or whatever conflict they have in their committee. And so we feel that in that way it is special, and in that way we feel that students are more committed to that, and more committed to cooperation, and more committed to forming friendships that will be long lasting. And that's why I think a lot of our students, like Christina was saying, and like Christina, for example, ended up going to Harvard and ended up still committing herself to HACIA. We have another person on board who did the same. And we feel that that's because HACIA really becomes a very integral part of formation in learning to not only communicate, but really flesh out topics and learn how you can use other people's expertise and other people's knowledge to help build collaboratives, like intellectual collaboratives. So we feel that HACIA in that way stands out from other traditional Model UN styles, because you sort of take kids out of that Model UN context.
I think also another thing, when I was at Harvard, I participated in Model UN as well, but I noticed that in those conferences, especially for like the high schoolers, they were really big. Like these committees were 3-4 times the size that the committees at HACIA are. And I don't know about any other high school student, but especially if I had been starting Model UN and had walked into the room of like 100 people in a committee, that would have been a really intimidating experience. And HACIA, because it's held in Latin America, is much smaller. And so you really get a lot more focus, you get a lot more speaking time, you get a lot more, there's a lot more like, there's less like factions that split up, you know, when you're making like papers and other things. And you really get to know the group of people that are in HACIA, that your like committee, you get to know them really well. HACIA has a long-standing tradition of a lot of icebreakers. So you, like Sophia was saying, you know, you make friends there for life. Like a lot of the friends that I've made from all different countries in Latin America, we're tight, you know. I think also in one sense, HACIA is a group of people from Latin America. You know, there's students when you go to like a HNMUN in like Boston, for example, you may get students from, you know, all different countries, and that obviously is a great perspective. But if you're interested in like Latin American issues and the countries that deal with Latin American issues, HACIA is really the way to go. You know, if you're interested in Latin American history, if you're interested in the people, you know, that live right below the United States, and that has a lot of influence on the United States, and you want to hear perspectives from people who live in those countries and people who, you know, who are oftentimes the daughter of the ex-president, or, you know, like somebody, we had a cabinet where it was, I think it was the Ronald Reagan cabinet, but somebody was like the daughter of the president that was in Panama when like all those things were happening. And so there's really like a kind of different perspective, just because Latin America is so small, you know. Yeah, so I think, you know, if you're coming from the United States, you want a real experience in Latin America and you want a small committee where you can feel comfortable, then Latin America and HACIA Democracy is the way to go.
I definitely agree with you. When we went last year, the sense of community was definitely bigger than any of the other Model UN conferences that we've been to. And I think one of the reasons for that is because a lot of the meals and social activities are done together as an entire conference. Why did you guys decide to take on that format and have so much time where students are interacting with one another?
So Christina's experience with HACIA goes back longer than mine, since I've been doing it in college and she was doing it since before. But it's a tradition that was passed on because, again, HACIA Democracy started very small. It started in Panama around 1994. And being so small, they really, it's in the name that they wanted to cultivate inter-American democracy by bringing students together to solve issues, and they wanted to integrate that aspect of the conference in all parts. So, you know, everybody goes to the Taste of HACIA, that everybody goes together to eat lunch, that, you know, everybody can get together in multiple ways, and that's why the icebreakers are also a very important part where we hope that people meet each other. We try to get our chairs to interact more with the delegates than they might at like a Model UN conference or even a Model Congress conference. And so it's all been part of the structure that we have to try to bring delegates together throughout the entire conference, because we know how valuable those friendships are. And we've had several delegates who end up asking staffers for recommendation letters, or end up asking staffers for advice or tours at Harvard, or even, you know, end up supporting each other through different processes. It doesn't have to just be the college application process. And we know that there's so much value to that. And so that's something that every leadership team has tried to maintain. And Christina goes back more with that farther with that tradition.
Well, I think also a part of it is it's Latin America, and Latin Americans are super friendly. They're very inviting. They're very warm. They're people, who've been through a lot, but still we have some of like the highest, like happiest country ratings in the world, and so I think that culture really gets passed down through like the board. A lot of us are Latin American. Sophia, although she grew up in El Paso, Texas, is like right there on the border with Mexico. Her family is Mexican. My family is half Nicaraguan, and a lot of people serving on the board. We have someone from Uruguay. We have even staffers, because they need to be able to speak Spanish. A lot of times they're from Latin America. And so I think that inviting, warm culture is sort of passed down into our conference. And I think that is part of the Latin American culture. Of being inviting and getting to know everyone really well and being super friendly. And yeah, so I think that definitely what Sophia was saying, we make a concerted effort to create these sort of community spaces, but also at the same time, it's the delegates who also contribute a lot. They're the ones who go to these events. They're the ones who make, so-called the party that like is so super exciting and super happy and like a very positive, vibrant mood.
So last held in San Jose, Costa Rica. This year we're in Panama. How did you decide to move the conference back to Panama City? I know it's been held there a couple of times in the past. How does that process work out? How do you choose what country you're going to host the conference in every year?
Decided on several factors. Decided on which hotels are able to host us, because we have a certain number of hotels that we've worked with in the past or really want to work with us and offer us different deals. So we want to make sure that it's an option that's most affordable for the delegates for that year. We want to make sure that it's an option that's safe, with Panama being a place that is considered to be very safe, especially in Panama City. We want to make sure that the option is very accessible to students. We've already talked about money-wise, but also in location, we have a lot of delegates that come from Panama. And so we try to cycle back to those countries where we have a lot of schools coming from so that more people can access it. And as it grows bigger, that more, especially public schools, are able to come to our conference. And we had a lot of schools from Panama that wanted to engage in that. And then we also want the place to have some sort of historical significance. And we felt that Panama, this was a great year for Panama because, well, there was several different things going on in Panama, but we felt that Panama is somewhere that not only is it our home place, and we hadn't been there in a very long time, has a lot of, economic diversity, and students can go visit that. And, in the time that they're in Panama, it has a long history, especially with the United States, that visit and become more acquainted with. So we felt that Panama, for those reasons, was a great option. But yeah, largely it came down to the most affordable option, and then from there we start choosing based on other factors.
One of the other unique aspects of HACIA, the conferences in the States, is that it's a bilingual conference. Committees take place in both Spanish and English. So I'm going to sort of put you guys on the spot right here. What do you think is going to be the best English language committee, and what do you think is going to be language committee at this year's conference?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is a difficult one, because I think that we have such a wide range of committees for a wide range of interests. So I think if you are a very high level Model UNer, so if you've done Model UN a lot, or if you've done debate a lot, or if you've done HACIA several times, then a high intensity one is probably going to be Security Council. We have an experienced staffer on that one who's very much interested in the topic. And, Security Council tends to be, in Spanish, tends to be very fast-paced committee. So you have that one. If you like more open style, really any of them. I mean, with UNASUR, we have a great chair. Cumbre, we have great chairs. All the committees, we have great chairs. it's going to be hard to say. I think in English, we have a committee we've reintroduced for people. I know a lot of people really wanted to bring back a committee related more to health in the Americas. So we brought back PAHO. So that seems like one that people might be excited about this year. We have Andrew Ma, who served as a crisis staffer last year, is back again. And this year he is doing the Sandinista Front, the FSLN. And we think that that's very important because it's about Nicaragua. We have a lot of Nicaraguan students that are going to be participating. We had a lot of demand for the FSLN committee, which is the Sandinista Front committee. And our staffer, he has led the crisis committee in ASEAN, has had great reviews for the past 3 years. So we think that's going to be for high level delegates, that's probably going to be one of the corner piece committees for English. But again, I think we try to select the best staffers we possibly can. It's a very selective process to staff for HACIA Democracy. We have a lot of return staffs, and really I think it'll be based more on your interest of topics, like which topic are you going to want to do. And for those that are seeking a very high intensity experience for very experienced staffers, I'd say probably the Sandinista Front on the English side and Consejo de Seguridad on the Spanish side. But really, yeah, based on your interest.
Okay, Christina, Sophia had to dodge that question because she had to keep her staff happy. But I'm going to hold you to your favorite or your most excited for which Spanish committee and one English committee.
Okay, well, in English, it's definitely the FSLN, just because I'm from Nicaragua, and Andrew Ma is a great chair. My brothers actually participate in HACIA as well, and they were just head over heels for FSLN. And I've heard so many great things about Andrew Ma that definitely would be the one I'm most interested in. In terms of Spanish, I did court in Spanish, and I really like the style of court. I think that court is to be in a committee. It's one of it was definitely for growing up in the HACIA world. Court was known as the hardest committee, but also one of the most rewarding, right? Because you represent one side, and then the debate happens, and it's a very more direct style instead of a more like how kind of Sophia was saying, an open style. So I really like the chairs for court this year, and I think that it's going to be a great committee.
So now what Sophia and Christina may or may not know is we actually have an alumnus on staff this year, working on the Brazilian Senate, I believe. So Ben Schaefer is working on the Brazilian committee. So I'm going to have to tell him that you guys did not, unfortunately, pick his committee for being one of the cornerstones of this year's conference.
No, we love Ben.
Yeah, he's a new staffer, and I remember now he was in the All-American delegation. That's true. Yeah. That was awesome.
A couple of years ago. So as friendly as the Latin American students are outside of the committee room, in debate, they're some of the most competitive, fiercest debaters I've ever seen anywhere in the world. How are you guys able to cultivate among Latin American schools, and then such a high level of participation in the committees? It seems like everyone participates in those committees. It's not just 4 or 3 people like a lot of other conferences that I've been to. So what training do you give your chairs to really engage with all of the students in committee, and how do you achieve such a high level of debate?
So actually our chairs, having been last year and even this year, the process to be selected for HACIA staff is very competitive, even amongst Harvard students. So we end up really taking only the best chairs that there are from, and many of them are from Model Congress, and others are from the wider Harvard community and other debate communities. And we always try to pair, for example, in Ben's committee, we have is an expert in Brazil, is also from Brazil, and is extremely interested in the topic. And then we have Ben, who's also very interested in the topic, that is very, very good at Model UN and has proved himself on the Model UN team. And so we try to make combinations like that. And like I said, I think we have 2 head delegates, 2 of the Model UN who've been Model UN head delegates currently on staff. Every year we have at least 2 Model UN head delegates of the Harvard team on staff, some of the best debaters that we have. And this year we also have the SecGen of the Secretary General of Harvard Model United Nations, who's a staffer, Bennett Bowe. And so every year we end up with this sort of talent because we're so selective, and a lot of staffers really want to participate in this conference over spring break. Because they've heard such great things. So that's part of it, is that our staffers already come with that. We do try to have many trainings collectively where we talk about there are some minor procedural changes between Harvard Model UN and this Model UN, especially in court. So we have our staffers meet with their co-staffers regularly. We have them meet with us together where we go over again what the mission is. We go over simulations of what committees might look like. We go over training of how to handle certain situations with delegates, shy delegates, delegates who really want to stick to procedure, delegates who are not understanding crisis. So we go through a lot of these trainings. Sometimes we've had staffers who are also the crisis trainers for the Harvard team. So we really have, I think it just really comes from having staffers that are so dedicated to teaching this. And some of them came from HACIA and know that aspect. And so we really collaborate in coming up with how we're going, like the pedagogy, how we're going to teach what we want at HACIA conference, what theme we want to come up with. And our staffers, one of the criteria we use to choose staffers is how passionate they are about the actual issues, not just how good they are at Model UN. Some very good Model UNers don't get in because we feel that that is so important. That they really have an interest in the overall mission and our overall goal. And so I think that's really what does it. And every day, we debrief, we talk about what went right or wrong, what we could do better. We train the junior co-chairs. Christina has been working also all year in working with representatives from different countries and making sure that's taken care of. And our teams, I think people who come to HACIA are so dedicated because for many schools, it's the only conference they can come to, and it's a lot that they have to put in to come. And so this is very, very important to them. And we have people, when I was director of Spanish committees, I had students who would contact me and I need extra help here. I'm very nervous about this. And we talk to them and we have our staffers communicate with them, and it's very important to us. And Christina can say more of on the ground preparations since she's been there.
Yeah. I guess in my experience, like as from the point of a delegate, like a lot of my friends, they fundraise to come to this conference. They put in a lot of time, a lot of effort. Like Sophia was saying, it's one of the only conferences that, if you're from Latin America, it's like pretty easy to get a flight into Latin America. And so like this is like the biggest event of like Latin America of the year, for a lot of students, in addition to an opportunity to travel. So a lot of the delegates that we get, when they get there, they're ready to go. They're ready, they're competitive, they have done their research. This is really the only conference they've been preparing for. They've also fundraised, they've put in their own money to come. And I think that along with the chairs who are extremely passionate about their topics and very accessible, you can email any of them and they'll totally respond. Along with that, like that's really what makes HACIA's delegates so competitive.
So I guess one last question, Paul, but I'll put it out there anyway. What are you guys looking forward to the most at this year's conference, other than escaping the cold of Cambridge for a few days and traveling down to a little bit warmer weather? What's most exciting for you? That's number one. And number two, if you could give or explain why students from the U.S. should be excited about going.
So for me, it's been different things that I've looked forward to every year. When I was a committee chair, when I was director of committees, and now that I'm president, I think director, I didn't know what I was looking forward to, but the brightest moment of the conference, I led a crisis committee in Spanish at the time, was the level of debate. People took it seriously. I mean, people had full-on emotions. It was not faked at all. We had people get angry, we had get frustrated, we had people cry, we had people laugh, we had people almost cry with joy when they had something go through. I mean, people were really were into what was happening in committee. And for me, having gone through a year-long process of building the committee and creating the bulletin and trying to build in the crisis elements, that for me was so not just like rewarding, but when it happened, it was so much fun. Like, other than fun, that feeling that everyone is connected in that way to that topic was very exciting for me. I think last year, something that I found very enjoyable was a lot of the cultural events we have, like Taste of HACIA, talent show. The talent show last year was amazing. It was like, wow, I couldn't believe what the delegates were doing. We had some, I don't know if you all attended that, but we had some gymnastics routines that were amazing, some dance routines that were amazing. It was so much fun, and to see what those delegates were capable of, yeah, I just thought, wow, like that was so amazing. And the Taste of HACIA as well, I got to meet so many students, and they were so keen about sharing what they had and passing it on, and nobody was at their table. Everyone was trying to spread it as much as they could. And I thought that was just, I mean, that for me was so much fun, and I look forward to it a lot this year now that I'm in more of an administrative role. And yeah, one final pitch about why students from the US should join HACIA. I think I see it a lot in the staffers, and I see, you know, I've seen it in students that have come before from outside of Latin America, and I think it's the only opportunity, or one of the only opportunities really, that I can imagine having in high school. If you're interested in Latin America, or think you're interested in Latin America, or want to know more about it, to sit and talk about a topic from outside the region, from people from that region, like Christina was saying, people who, yeah, we've had committees where, you know, delegates have taken on roles that are personally important to them, and that in which they have a personal stake, or that their parents are involved in, or that their parents are against. We even had a delegate have to give a speech against the security officer of Honduras, who happened to be his dad, and to take on a role and think about, you know, things that were contrary to policies his dad were passing on. And yeah, it's a chance to really get to explore how Latin Americans think of their own region, and bring in, and for the Latin American delegates, the US delegates really bring in that other perspective, the US perspective, which often is missing in Latin America. And so I think that those two sides complement each other so well that they can learn a lot from each other. And you can't get it in the Model UN competitions in the US, because people can't come and take on roles that they're not familiar with. And that's not the case for HACIA. And I think that's another reason why the debate is so intense. And so I think that, yeah, my last pitch for HACIA would be, especially for students from the US, it's the best way to get an intensive cultural immersion process in the politics and economics and social history of Latin America.
Couldn't have said it better. Just exactly as Sophia said. The delegates are what I'm always excited about. They're the reason why we put on this conference. They're vastly the reason that, like, I'm so inspired to keep doing HACIA and keep going back to HACIA, and why we've started the Junior Recruiters Program, to reach out to get more students from different backgrounds. And this year I can really attest, my junior recruiters have recruited from, we have a school that's a French school from Nicaragua who's coming. We have all different new schools that are going to be attending and are going to be providing really interesting perspectives.
Sophia, Christina, thank you so much for waking up early and chatting with me. I really appreciate it. To everyone watching, I don't know what else I can say. HACIA is a great conference. We had a ton of fun last year. The debate is incredible. The host cities are always incredible. The food is always incredible. And if nothing else, apply for the team and get a few days off of school. With that, I will sort of end this broadcast. If you have any questions about HACIA and the All-American programs, go ahead and check out our website at allamericanmun.com. And we hope to see you guys again soon. Thanks so much.